Okay, welcome to BenKyo Study Group class number 23. Q-style bad exchanges you might be making. So this is going to be just a big assortment of bad exchanges, and some of them you might not realize you're making, and how much you're losing by playing these moves. So there's a lot of classic examples as well as a lot of what I've seen personally in BenKyo League and in years of teaching. So it's pretty much a random assortment, but also some very classic ones as well. So let's get started. We're going to be jumping around a bit in this one. So first of all, we have some very DDK oriented beginner kind of mistakes. And so this is the kind of thing you see when you have players that are really just focused on capturing stones. And so even sometimes after they've learned a lot of some opening theory and just kind of the basic picture of what a good game of Go looks like, sometimes you still see these kinds of moves come where, white is not satisfied with black being able to run away. So they're trying to play something in the center, thinking they can block black's way. Although black can just move out the other way or, jump this way. And the more white tries to stop black, it ends up being almost like a broken ladder, with cuts everywhere. So yeah, another example, like even here, playing right in the middle, right? Forcing black to take one of two directions. It might seem, nice and forceful, but black doesn't have to work too hard here. Although black did in this case tanuki many times, and so probably would have been better if black had added one more move earlier so that the liberties are so that white is not linking up quite this much. But even then, black has, if it's like this, black has gotten big corner moves in the meantime, and black can Atari and just connect for now. See what white does. White connect, black maybe push or tanuki. Probably black's corners are good enough anyway, but anyway, that's white again focusing too much on capturing. Although we have a funny start here, but yeah. Another example, and you can actually see this coming up in high level examples too. Like, I haven't prepared very many examples for this one part for kind of Dan level and SDK examples, but for example in this joseki where black has played a 3-5, kind of unusual, right? Yeah, and then white plays 3-3, or white maybe plays 3-3 and avoid and ignores black's approach. Then black double approaches really close like this, and of course white breaks through the middle. And usually what I would expect black to play is actually keeping a little bit of distance, something like this on either side. That way, when white does something like this and maybe black jumps, then no matter how many moves white plays here, it's going to take a while for this group to come into any sort of trouble, right? But if you have black sort of pushing along each side, now it starts looking almost like that double-digit Q thing we were talking about, where black is just going to have a lot of weaknesses and liberty shortage. But although black can sort of fix this up and play a bit better, if we just have white pushing along a little bit, then even up to here, black can start suffering if white just covers around here. It's already a little tricky for black to get out, and they'll have to make some bad exchanges. And yeah, not very good. So keeping your distance a bit and focusing on the territory patiently instead of trying to capture stones, because stones are only worth one more point on the intersection that they're on. So it's actually very easy to sacrifice stones, although it's important to know, of course, which stones are situationally too important to give up sometimes. For example, a cutting group that is cutting two not alive groups, basically, for profit, that's helping you attack them. a group like that, where you're getting a profitable attack, and your opponent has to keep spending low value moves to help some weak groups, that kind of cutting group has sometimes the greatest value out of everything on the board. But then as soon as your opponent lives with their groups, suddenly that group might be disposable. So it's very dynamic. It changes all the time. Let's move on to this move. So this is a situation where white has invaded. You know, this is pretty normal invasion. Black attaches on top, also pretty expected. And then white plays this Hane, and I don't know how many of you might play this move actually, but this is a classic. It's something that I've done a lot in the past, a long time ago, and probably some people in BenKyo League do. I know that it has come up in my BenKyo League game reviews before. I just don't know if those people still do it. But, you know, we have a wide range of levels in BenKyo League, so there's probably one or more of you playing this move sometimes. And this is kind of like a self-cut, self-liberty shortage exchange. And of course we play this because we want this Atari to be an Atari. We want this wedge to become an Atari, right? That way black will go out, we'll connect, black will block, and now we can push along. But the problem with this is that now black can even double Hane, because now, because we lost one liberty with this exchange, up to here, if we try to capture black's stone like so, black goes down, we cover, then white's actually going to lose the liberty fight. So that's the problem of losing the one important liberty. And actually what you want to do here is wedge directly. This one's actually ladder related, so although there's variations such as black pushing up like this, for example, sometimes even here, I mean, most Q players are not gonna play one of these moves anyway, and the way to handle that kind of move, yeah, for example, if black pushes here, is usually to Atari and then extend. I think you can also Hane here, but yeah, Atari extend. Black then has to handle this part somehow, like here or sometimes here. And then white often ends up just turning and getting something in the center that way. So that's how you handle that. But most Q players are not going to play these moves, and they're probably just going to go after the stone here or connect here. And actually, this is another thing that you see a lot in Q level games where black feels content to connect under like this, but actually it's most of the time good for white, and that's something that some players don't know. White captures, black needs to play here to make sure there's never going to be a deadly ko to disconnect everything. And then white usually tanukis at this point, plays away. Yeah. But in most cases, this is going to be good for white, actually. White can just take that influence and maybe play here, maybe play here, here. But in the cases where it's not good for white, like even if white judged that here, then you can just extend. And extend is just going to be simple. And we'll get into that, but I just want to show the ladders I was talking about. So first of all, if black connects here, there's this ladder, right? And basically, if this ladder works for white, it's usually good for white. If it works for black, then obviously black can go out and it could be playable for black. And white shouldn't wedge when either of the ladders work. And the other ladder is going to be when black takes the stone and white has nothing to do but to counter Atari here. And usually they would do the obligatory or sort of the free Atari here, although it could become a really big ko, so white should check ko threats. But normally you want to get this exchange in because it's just a nice, you know, making black fill like that. It's a very nice exchange. But the important point here is this. So even if you forget about this Atari, it's this ladder here. So yeah, this ladder is going to go up that way. And so basically in this kind of shape, right, when you invade in the middle of a 3-space high extension, you need to check both of those ladders before you wedge here, basically. So there's one ladder going up this way, which black has the choice of which ladder happens. So if black plays here, you need this ladder. If black plays here, you need this ladder. But in all the other cases, or even sometimes when you have the ladder, you might still choose to play here. And yeah, this is going to live pretty easily like so, here, and like this, and like this. And here, and just push, exchange, block. Yeah. Do that, finish living. Something like this. Yeah. And if black hanes, then it's also easy. Just hane, and pushing again would live, but also you can switch to this and clamp and connect to the side and connect to the corner. So that's going to be good for whites. That's why actually black technically yeah, although this can turn into the same thing, like if black wedges or peeps now, but technically when black plays here, white can extend. And so if black wants to just control the variations, the textbook way to do this is actually to hane first and then play here. So if you wanted to memorize this, yeah, it would be hane and then block, and then white ataris and plays tiger's mouth, hane here, and then cover, some kind of covering move. And then I would recommend making one exchange here. Regardless of what kind of corner this is, often this descend can help the corner a little bit. Black needs to stop you from connecting if they want you to spend this move to live, and then black plays away. You don't really need this exchange, but it's just, why not squeeze that in? Yeah. Common mistake here actually is playing here, but after black ataris and plays some kind of threatening move on white's life and death, whatever that may be in the situation, here, this is actually can be ko. So that's not nice for white because it could potentially be dangerous. It also gives black this atari, which then gives black this connected 3-3 invasion that connects under. So that's also not that nice for us. But yeah, that's the sequence there. Now going back to this wedge with the two ladders you have to check. So the fact that you can wedge is the reason why you don't need to hane here and get yourself cut and lose the important liberty, because if you want to hane here to make this atari, then just make that move directly. That's the idea. That's a very common difference between Dan level play and Q level play is, you know, Q players make a bad exchange A so that they can play B, but Dan players just play B. So it's like that. Yeah. Kind of like here, you know, I'm sure many of you have seen this kind of push in this joseki or in a similar shape, and they push, and you might be doing this, right? Pushing here so that you can push here in sente to make black go here. But actually this is 100% sente without the other exchange. And also black's not going to take this away from you, because why wouldn't black want to take more and go this way, right? It doesn't make sense for black to go here and give you the hane. So black's going to do this anyway, because if black tries to ignore, the push and cut is devastating, reducing black to a corner that'll get even smaller than that later, and white takes. And then ends up something like maybe like this. So like this or like this. That's going to be a small corner. Yeah. So black virtually always has to play here anyway. No need to push, and we'll get into that. But this is a push that loses a lot for white. First of all, it loses a co-threat. Second, it loses liberty. So in the future, if black is doing like this move and possibly this move, then the one liberty can make a big difference. It loses other things too. For example, if there's ever any endgame along the edge here, imagine if white has some stones around here wanting to play endgame reduction moves, sort of going north there, like, you know, monkey jump or any sort of first or second line stuff in that vicinity. The B15 stone is actually going to help black blocking off their points. Imagine if it's not there and white has some stones around here like this, then white could even play here and then pull it back. or just monkey jump, or like push and then clamp and connect under, stuff like that. Or at least just getting this hane and sente. But if it's like this and white has pushed here, I mean, then already we can't even go this far, right? We can only just maybe push like that. And we lost points even from C15 push, because if that exchange was not on the board, then we have the option to play here to get even deeper in, right? So we lose a lot of things. And suppose you push without this push, you also lose a lot from that for the reasons I said before, but also like if you play here, which is actually a common post-joseki move against this corner. This move has various follow-ups, obviously covering here, but it also has this follow-up. Again, playing under, which is exactly the spot you give to black when you meaninglessly push here. So, yeah. That's an example of those bad exchanges. And so here, don't do the hane self-cut, just play here directly, or play here if you don't like the wedge. Okay. This move. So this kind of invasion, you know, whether the stone is like there or there, doesn't really matter, but, and I'll just delete that little variation I made. Oh, yeah, there we go. Let's delete this thing. So this is a common, it's not that huge of a mistake compared to some others, but this is a very common one we see is somebody invades a 3-3 when there's like a stone, you know, somewhere around here as well for black. And then you just block, right? And it makes sense. It makes sense that many of you that you would do this, because the question you're asking yourself when white plays the 3-3 here is, okay, which side do I want? Do I want to cut white off and focus on that side? Or do I want to block here and focus on this side? That's the, you know, the sensible question here, right? The problem is that you can do a little bit better than this, because if you play here, now this comes back to another bad exchange. So this bumping your head on a tiger's mouth. So don't do this either. There's cases for it, but almost never is it a good move. So when the move your opponent is going to play is going to be responding with is this kind of tiger's mouth, then usually don't want to bonk your head against it like that. You know, don't bump your head. Otherwise we'll have to come up with a, you know, some kind of tune for that, like you know, got out of bed, bumped his head, couldn't get up in the morning. You guys know that one? It's raining, it's pouring, so and so is snoring, they got out of bed, bumped their head, and couldn't get up in the morning. Yeah. I don't know if we can change that somehow to fit with Go, but yeah, don't bump your head against the tiger's mouth, okay? So the reason why we don't bump our head there is because we can exchange these first to gain liberties. And once we have enough liberties, we can now fly over with the tiger's mouth. So if you played the tiger's mouth before, it wouldn't really work too well, because black can push and cut, or even consider clamping. Yeah. But if you make more liberties, then, you know, the cut is not going to do anything. And that's going to bring us to yet another bad exchange. That's 3 in one spot, but we'll wait on that one. We'll talk about that later, because I need to circle back to this move. So if we look at the proper way to do this, which is to knight's move here. So now, you know, previously we bonked our head like this. You wouldn't want to do that here. That's going to limit you to an L+2 corner, which is like small L plus 2 legs like this, which is a known alive corner, you know. L+2 is alive, L+1 is unsettled, depends on who has sente, and small L is dead already. It's those shapes. So L+2 alive, but it means it's just barely alive and it has very little points. And black blocks off everything in sente and then is super happy. So, and like if you play here, which is the better move, right? If your opponent plays here, do you really want to pull back there and make this into a sente move for black? You shouldn't, because you can go forward and actually black's bumping here is super bad. You can go forward and they cannot accomplish anything with this cut. And so black would lose quite a bit from playing this move. So since you're not going to like pull back like that against black's bumping move, then why bump your head like that and then play here, right? Because that's, if we change the order of moves, that's what it turns into. So of course when black bumps here, this extending is infinitely, I mean, way better than anything else. Even like compared to this one, it's way better because here black still gets the block. And this is the worst of all of them. This one's even worse than this one, I think. So, yeah. So that's why you don't bump your head like this. And that's why the Hanen connects to make black connect here. That's why this can be useful. You know, just like in the well-known joseki here. So after white pushes, white wants to jump ahead here, but there's a cutting problem because of our liberties. Like here, then we get cut on the outside. And if we fix the outside, then boom, 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 and white is captured. So we Hanen connect now. Because although it damages our outside stone, it allows us to jump out to here with this cut not doing anything now. So that's a little bit of review on that joseki, the meaning of the Hanen connect. Okay, now circling back to that third thing here, which is super common. I see this all the time. I even see this being done. Actually, let's go back to the actual shape, which is... where is it? Well, this one, yeah. I see this all the time, and I see this being played by players who are probably a little too strong to be doing this, so they need to fix this habit, which is this push, this kind of push. So this push, you have to ask yourself, whenever you play a move, you have to ask yourself, what did I gain? So chat, what did black gain from this push? And you can do this with a lot of your moves. When you're reviewing, you have to ask yourself, like, you need to be able to point your finger to the points or whatever it is you gained, and you know, or a move that this one enables, or like it really doesn't do anything. There's no moves in this vicinity that required black to have a stone here to play. It doesn't have any points, and the best you can say about it is that, like, some people make the wrong, have the sort of the misconception that sente means good, but that's wrong too, right? Because sente doesn't have any inherent value. Sente is like a multiplier. So if your move is like 3 points, sente makes it more like worth 6. It's like that. This move reduces white by 1 point, but white was never going to block here anytime soon anyways, right? Why would white play a 1 point move there when white's alive already and can play other things? So black shouldn't do it either. And it, yeah, it loses a liberty. Well, it doesn't exactly lose a liberty, but it loses a co-threat. And it loses some other things too, which I'll show in a sec. Very similar to what I showed a few minutes ago elsewhere. But it loses a lot of things. Like if you push here, now you can't really block here easily, because now when white wedges, for example, yeah, white can wedge, and then this Atari might be trouble for black. For example, after this, white can turn, black has to save the 2 stones. then white can Atari. So it's getting annoying for black. Yeah. But if you didn't push, you can actually block here. Because if white wedges, it doesn't work. You can Atari and take, and then the corner dies. So already it enabled you to block your territory properly. If you make this exchange, how do you block off the right side now? This move doesn't work well. This one doesn't really, like, white can still jump in. So this is probably the proper shape at this point, but that's kind of sad that you have to do that. Of course, black could tanuki, but normally in the joseki, black blocks here. And there's a lot of incentive to block here, actually. Especially blocking specifically on this line, limiting white's shape specifically to this, because after this, and then white usually forces once here because why not? And then white lives. Sometimes white can push and cut first, but that's just complicated stuff. The classic joseki here, at least, is for white to just fix, and then black fixes, and then white takes sente. But notice that we made white have to fix. That's because if white doesn't play anything, this actually becomes a life and death problem. Yeah, black can start from here. So this is a common life and death problem, and white needs this move to be perfectly alive. And then so black can fix now, or like here. But notice that black did perfectly block off the right side. So that gave black time to block the right side and also fix the problem. And there's a few ways to fix this. You can, depends on the board. You can choose to do it this way, this way, this way. Yeah. And white plays something light here because there isn't really much territory for that group anyway. So white plays something light here so that, something like this so that black doesn't play it. And then black just kind of plays elsewhere. Maybe be here, maybe approach. That's an old school classic Chinese opening continuation, but yeah. So again, we lose a lot of stuff when we do this kind of meaningless push. So make sure you don't do that. Yeah, like if we play like this, right? And now black is supposed to kill, right? But then black does this push. Oh, suddenly white is not killable anymore. I think this shape there might be, let me try to read this. There might be a ko. This shape is going to be, I'm seeing a lot of variations where it just dies, but I don't remember perfectly. There might be some sort of ko, but it's a lot more alive than it's supposed to be. Basically, this is not the move that that you should wanna, because now if you try to Hane here to reduce the space, white can play here and suddenly you can't kill it anymore. Whereas if you Hane directly, you can. And that's because if white plays here, you're not going to play this move. Why would you play on the outside to give white an inside vital point when you can just, for example, reduce the space now? Like here and then here, or yeah, just here, or what else can we do? Yeah, probably just here. If they play this one, then we pop out the other 2-1 points. And then at that point, even if we just reduce, this is going to be a dead shape. Okay, anyway, you get the point, right? So this exchange is super bad. Okay, moving along. We're going to move along to... there's some examples I actually pulled from some of your games, and I'm not even going to say whose games I used, but there's a few variations in this tree that have some people's games in there. And This one is going to be an example of sort of following your opponent, as well as just kind of, this is some combination of following the opponent and caring too much about stones. And I'm just going to take a drink of water here. So white connected, but the problem with this connect is that black can just pincer, and this is going to take more points than the connect gave white. It's also going to attack this whole white shape. Like, not even this diagonal is going to make white into a locally alive shape. So it's not making sense to connect here. White should have played here. In fact, it's important that this move becomes obvious. Because it's also where black could make points too. Yeah, so that's important. Yeah, also white should have played it here instead of here, but that's another another point. I just finished reviewing a game in a lesson before this class where there was an example that was like, let me see, there was a bit less space, so let's just say something like this. Black got to kick here, and then maybe there was more space than that actually. Maybe I don't know. I'll just do it like this. So yeah, black kicked, and normally white should stand up, let themselves get pincered, and just be patient and do something like this. And there's some still some 3/3 aji, and this stone needs help. White went for this one, and this is actually a technique that you do see this in rare cases. This would be a case where black has a lot of strength around, like more than this, and where like the attack on white, if white just plays here, would be way too much, and even like maybe killing white after black pincers. Like for example, if there's a lot of black out here, maybe we're inside of a black moyo. So there's a technique I have seen many times before where white hanes once and then plays like this. It is very generous territory-wise because it lets black have even the option to take this, which is going to remove all the 3/3 aji once and for all. And then, but the good thing here for white is that white would be able to not connect this, okay? That's very important that you guys don't care about the stones so much. It's important that white takes the fresh base over here. But why protect like your old stuff, which is also going to give you less, when you can just take new stuff, and it's stuff that black would have wanted. So this is going to make white fully secure now. It's like 2 space extension plus some extra stuff, and even with some extra space here. So yeah, although in the general case, in the open board case, this is going to be good for black, or at least maybe black shouldn't be capturing this right now, but play here to put pressure on white's entire group, and then even you know, keep up the pressure somehow. But it's very nice for black's corner though, because all the invasion aji is gone and it's rather large points wise. But that is a technique. So the problem is, in the game, the opponent actually connected this, and now that is actually for example, if it's like this, right, it is very important that white doesn't Atari here, because this Atari is going to make black's corner very clean. And that's another, you know, a common thing of Q versus Dan games, is that Q players will make this kind of Atari, but Dan players will connect here and wait for their chance to do stuff like this and use that, which doesn't quite work at the moment, but it can work when there's some prep, like maybe stone here, stuff like that, that they can make use of, like either a cutting point here or like cutting point here. So it needs some setup, but white can do some stuff. Even like make use of something like this in the future, which, like, let's say that black let white in and then had to connect, then there can be something happening with whites making life inside of the corner, you know, like this, like this. So there's some aji. In fact, in the end game, suppose the board is filled up, right? Suppose it's like move 200 or something, move 180. When white Hane's here, black even has to be careful, because if black Atari's in this particular case, and supposing, you know, that white is super alive already, then white can actually Atari here, because there's going to be a peep and an Atari here, or, you know, Atari and then peep, followed by this 2-1 move, which in many cases is just going to live now inside of black's corner. Black tries to kill, but white blocks Atari. And if black had some kind of like a stone here, black could Atari this side and drag it out, which makes a false eye. But if black doesn't, then white is just alive. So that could be quite the upset in some game positions for white to live in there, right? In fact, if black were fully surrounded, black would even maybe die from that. So locally or generally, black has to even pull back here. But of course, it would be even better if we could set up for the clamp and peep kind of stuff. I'm talking about this kind of stuff. But basically, it's very important not to Atari this, because you lose everything. You lose all the stuff if you Atari that. Now, the main mistake in their actual game by white is that white connected here, which is smarter than Atarying here, sure. But this is putting the cart before the horse, because black can just pincer. Like, white's connecting, but what are you blocking if you play this? What are you protecting? What are you blocking off? This is no one's, right? This is essentially a wall, which would be used to extend normally, right? And normally black has to, if it's like a joseki, then we would have, you know, black finishing up with something here and then white having time to extend. But here, you know, black just takes everything and white just gets nothing. That's just how this is going. You can't just save your stone like that when you have no base. You have to let it go. And if it goes like this, then you can connect it. Now at least you have, you know, the beginnings of a base, right? So I see this all the time. People block somewhere where they don't actually control what's on the other side. For example, another example would be, let's say there's like a big wall that white has, you know, just let's make a contrived example here. And okay, let's say something like this, right? And white does some kind of block like this. I see this all the time. White does some kind of block, but then black just takes the stuff, right? It doesn't make sense to block here when you're blocking nothing. So in that kind of scenario, you need to just accept that you're undercut. And if you think you need to move around here, then you just play it and you let them undercut you and you say, so what? And then you just do other things. Maybe you defend it to stay connected and you focus more on sort of the center with that group, or in some cases, for example, if it's like here, then you might even just extend again. It kind of depends on, you know, how bad is this, right? Probably pretty bad, but maybe this white group is already connected to some friends here. Then maybe it's okay to extend here. But yeah, anyway, don't block when you're not protecting anything. And along those lines, I should also just chime in with one thing that is not in the variation tree, so I'll just say, which is that in the opening stage, and I'm sorry if I'm ignoring any comments, it's because it looks like I'm not. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's because when I'm clicking through these variations, or even when I hover the variations, it's gonna keep, at least for the video, it's gonna keep popping over to different variations, and it's gonna look kind of crazy. And also I just have to keep scrolling with the scroll bar to get back up to my list of yeah, my variations. But I am checking the responses from time to time. So do not threaten or respond to monkey jumps in the opening. Like, let's say that we have some kind of situation like this, and let's say that it is very early in the game. What I see all the time is like black plays something like this and white just blocks it. Especially when it's like this, like black plays here and white just blocks it. But I'm thinking, why do you need to block that when you can just take something new? And they play here, okay, just, you know, take something bigger and then just keep taking something bigger, right? Because how many points is black erasing? They're erasing like some points here that weren't even yours yet because they already played that one. And then like a few points here. It's like so little points with 3 moves. Meanwhile, white's getting some stuff in the center anyways. And is settled enough because you don't have to have a base to be settled. You can be settled by other means. And the worst part is when, like, often it's a case where it's something like this, and then, you know, or maybe white played like here, black did this, and then this move happens, and this move is going to take away all the 3/3. Like, white has Aji to go here. Like, if there's a, for example, if there's a move here, then white can do this, and then cut. And white is gonna, and this is a locally dead corner shape, like here, then here, dead. It's gonna die. Here, then here, and it's gonna be 1 eye. So white's dead in terms of life and death. But not when you consider this cut, though. And that's where white's prep move at M17 comes in. And I've covered this a lot on stream and stuff, and in lessons with some of you, but you know, there's a lot of Aji with that. There's Aji with attach and 3/3 to turn the 3/3 move into a peeping move. And this is going to be related to ladder. So like here, this, force here, and then this. And if white has the ladder, white can actually pull this out and it gets complicated because this group is also in some danger, and there's always the threat of like a big squeeze on the black group getting surrounded. So there's a lot going on here, and often even if white ends up sacrificing, it ends up good for white. So since it was black's corner anyway, and white gets a whole bunch of outside moves depending on what happens. So there's quite a lot of Aji left in the 3/3 that I've gone over with you so far, and to let black just get this move for free is a big shame, because now this is all territory. And that's why in case it, you know, makes you like this kick more, this kind of kick move is actually, you might say it's a little bit overpowered in what you might call like the Q level meta, or like in Q level play, because it does depend. It depends on also black's skill at handling this kind of invasion. But in general, if they know what to look out for, like white's prep moves, and they know that they should like do some kind of, for example, that one, which makes there be no cutting point, or like this one, so that white has no connection under at S15. But as long as black knows that they need, like when they need to respond, or how to handle this one, and how to deal with the life and death in the corner, for example, like just Tane. And actually white's dead already at that point, so black can just fix the cut. Funny enough, but you know, black needs to know how to handle stuff, but if they do, then the kick is kind of overpowered, because invading as white, like knowing how to set it up and knowing like these kinds of variations, which, you know, have the thing that I showed, but also have even this weird empty triangle move. And some stuff where black ends up taking back the corner, something like this, or Hane, and yeah, there's a bunch of stuff with this. But basically, white, like, as long as black knows some basics of how to handle this, then white's the one who has sort of a lot, like that's why a lot of you don't invade here, right? Because you don't know what to do, like you don't know how to do it. So I see a lot of times you guys make just exchange like this, which in Dan level play is super bad exchanges because now black is all solid. That's the same reason why before, right, when white Haned here, this Atari is a super bad exchange. Needs to be connect or Tanuki. So basically the kick is like a little bit overpowered in Q level games, I would say, because of the fact that if white never exploits the Aji in there, it's quite a big corner in sente, right? It's gonna be at least something like this. So it's gonna be 15 points, and white has like 4, and black got sente, right? So it's very strong. Okay, that's that stuff. So just don't block. It's a big shame to like let black, this is a big move locally for black because it gets rid of the 3/3 invasion once and for all. White needs to not just protect. What are you protecting? You're protecting 4 points, maybe not even 4 points, because maybe black gets this. So why, right? Why, when you can just take more instead? Which is also like, this is a place where only white can make territory at this point. Like the best black can do is a slight increase by pushing in, right? But this is a place where black can make lots of points, right? So absolutely white should be not defending what they have, but instead taking something new. Or Tanuki entirely, right? To do some other thing. Like, basically, don't let black get something like this for free, because you might see it as, oh, we're both descending, so it's equal, right? It's not equal, because this corner used to be invadable. Yeah. And even just in general, like, even if this was just some other type of territory that didn't have any, you know, Aji of 3/3 invasion. But in general, if it's early in the game, and suppose, you know, maybe it looks like this, if it's like in the first 100 moves of the game, let's just make it like that. Do not block against monkey jump, because again, like you can, like monkey jump is like 7-point move, depending. It depends on the shape. Sometimes less, sometimes more. But like you can just take some other move, which is like, this is like a 20-something point move. Yeah, I mean, so anyway, let's move on from that. Okay, what's next? So here's another game example that I've brought. We have this push, which is another example of like the meaningless pushes. It just helps white. White wasn't gonna play on that spot anyway. Like white's not really about to play here to claim 1 point, right? So no need to push here. Pushing here loses stuff. For example, what if black wanted to have some power from this shoulder hit? Like if white ignores, then this move is taking a liberty away from the stone there, which can have follow-up of like maybe for example Atari, right? Maybe Atari, and then start doing something here and make a mess. But if this push is there already, then now this push is weak, right? Or what about attaching? If this push is done, then this attach is silly. White just Hanes and probably just kills it, right? But if there's no push, then maybe in some scenario, you know, this could be a useful attach, because first of all, there's always this Aji here again of like Atari and doing something there. Of course, right now it's not really set up very well, so not here. But what about this Hane? If white Ataris, black extends. If white blocks, then maybe black is going to Atari and sacrifice. And that might not be so bad for black. Give up 2 stones to get lots of forcing moves. If white goes here, then black has like push and then double Atari. But you know, if this exchange were made, then black would have nothing. So you give white liberties, you lose a co-threat, and you just make white stronger. So it's just not a good exchange. And we have another example of that in the same game, which is here by the other color. So white plays here, but it's not as though this is an asking move, right? Because black's of course gonna block. So what's the point of even playing that? You play that because you think, okay, if I play here, black's gonna take this away from me and I lost my chance. But is black really gonna play here? Are you sure? Right? Black's not gonna play there. That's just like 2 points, 1 or 2 point end game. You know, there's big moves on the board still, like here, some middle stuff. Even this one is bigger. This one. So, yeah, don't play something that your opponent is not going to take away from you. And plus, maybe instead of pushing, white's better move later is this one directly. Because if black bumps here, you're not going to play there to let yourself get cut. But if you play here, then they have a stone there. And then you go here, but then you get cut. But if you play here and they play there, then you connect, right? So it's different. So black has to cut you like this, but you can descend. And then in sometimes this can create a problem for black. And sometimes even if this doesn't capture black, it would create a liberty fight, which forces black to play a lot of moves inside to take off white. And it could end up being some correct endgame. If nothing else, it means that this block is sente, because if black doesn't respond, white can play here. Here, 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 descend and kill. Or even just get more liberties like this. Like this. But if black had already exchanged, if white had already exchanged this and then blocked, suddenly it's not sente. And I haven't even read it, I'm just assuming. Because sure, if white hanes and black cuts, then black's in trouble. But what if black hanes now? If black hanes, then what can white do? If white extends, black can push again. If white connects, black just kills. If white connects here, then black just blocks and nothing happened. Just a slight reduction. So it's a big difference having this this bad push exchange. Okay. Yeah, there's like legit danger if white plays here or even just does this directly. Okay, what else? Now we have this move. So ignore the rest of the board because this is just focused on the local situation here. But this is a very classic and common thing that I still see a lot of, which is this bad descent. And so this kind of move you should almost only play when you know that it's for life and death, and it's like, oh, you need one more eye space to make sure you're alive. There's cases like that. It's the same thing with the tiger's mouth. But in general, unless you know what your special reason is and you're sure of it, just connect. Just connect. Always just connect. Again, life and death might sometimes call for this one or this one, but this is not a life and death situation. This is just a territory situation. And chat, why is it bad to descend here? I want to hear your reasons. Bad endgame how? Gote is not really what's... So Gote and sente don't really have inherent value. So like Gote is sometimes the best you can get, right? Like locally speaking, if white wants to maximize the point difference, then hane can be good. So sometimes you do want to do it in sente like this to do these hanes and then take sente elsewhere, right? But there are plenty of times where you do want to do this because the local reduction is going to be much bigger. And in some cases, for example, if we take off the blackstone there, in this case, the hane and connect is actually much better than the S9 move, the direct descend, because this one actually leaves behind a working clamp. And like in this case, clamp is quite big, right? Because black cannot go down because this leads to Atari, which then leads to this Atari. So black has to connect, but then white can connect under and a lot of points are being destroyed. So if black defends, like maybe like this, then or like this, then white made a bigger point difference, or at least the same point difference compared to descending. So yeah, sometimes Hane is better. Co-threat, ability to take sente. You lose sente endgame possibilities. Yes. T11 sente for black takes away the chance to do it. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Tabimago and Druch. When it comes to the answers, you guys, like some of you gave answers that are not very specific or detailed, so therefore these answers end up being better answers. Yeah. So the reason, yeah, there's some stuff like, I mean, you could say that that black, you can say that black gets a co-threat later after this because this is going to be left here, but no. So the main reason is if you connect, first of all, you're happy if black adds a move because then you just got it in sente, right? So you just play elsewhere and you're happy. So you assume that black doesn't, like if this move is worth, let's say 14 points, and yes, it's going to be something like 14. It's 14 points, believe it or not. Watch the Endgame class if you haven't. But if this move is 14, that means that this response here is less than 14. That's just how the math works here, right? Because if this move is 14, that means this black Hane was 14. And actually, I think it's more than 14, by the way, guys, because in this case, because this is Atari, that means this clamp works. And if white has to connect and let this happen, that means it's even more suffering than like this kind of endgame. So this is potentially bigger than 14-point move, actually. That blows your, for those of you who don't know about this second line move values, like how big those moves are, it must sound hard to believe, right? Because 14 is like a huge, 14 is literally, wait, is that too much? 4, 8, 12. Yeah, 14 is literally this much, right? This is a side tangent comment, but that really puts it into perspective. Like when I'm always preaching about how deceptively small center stuff is, especially like those middle game moves and end game moves that get played that are like surrounding some sort of, you know, narrow corridor in the center or even a slightly wider one. Center can sometimes expand out of control and get huge and even super efficient, but in most cases it's not that efficient. And there's times to like suddenly switch to play a little bit of center, like reduce your opponent a little bit with a move or two, and then you switch away. Then you have to not get tunnel vision. You gotta make sure that you switch back sometimes to these huge edge moves. And again, we're assuming it's late in the game because we've left the board weirdly empty here, right? So just ignore all that. But it just when you just keep in mind, like when you watch that other video and you learn a thing or two about endgame, which is a very accessible topic, by the way. What I like about endgame stuff and move value calculation, when you calculate the total swing of like if he had played there versus if I had played there, and you factor in the sente follow-ups, if any, that they would have had, and you figure out the total value. For example, here, you know, white goes here, black goes here, white tanukis. Because, you know, if this is a 15 or if this is a 14-point move, fixing here must be less than a 14-point move. So surely if black played a 14-point move here, maybe I can find a 13 or 14-point move somewhere else to play, right? Which then means that black is going to get these sente follow-ups. Boom, 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 boom. All sente locally. And you can see here, white lost 6 and black gained 1. And the same thing will happen to black if white had played the Hane at S10. So already 7 plus 7, it gives 14. And that's from one gote, right? Because all of the follow-ups happened in sente. So they're all part of one package. Not going to turn this into an endgame video, but just, you know, to help believe in the value of second line moves. But just when we put that that picture in there, what is it? Where did it go? You know, the 14 points. That's a huge chunk of like a random. You could fit that into a moyo somewhere and realize how big it is. So, yeah. Okay, going back with the answers though. Basically, the problem with this DDK kind of descend, which many SDK still play, is that now this white move is sente, right? Black has to save the stones. And then white gets, you know, sente to play elsewhere, right? And that means that a lot of the value for black is lost. It's not going to be a 14-point move because if black had just connected, like black plays here to guarantee a point at S10, right? Or T10. Because if black plays here, maybe black was worried, oh, white can hane to erase my T10 point, right? But that's only 1 point. That's only 1 point. And then white gets gote and black gets to play elsewhere. But if black just connects instead of extending down, black's going to get T10 anyways, because white plays away. And then black gets all these. But the difference here is that if black descends and lets white get the T8 block in sente, then black doesn't get to reduce these extra 4 points. So instead of a 14-point move, it becomes a 10-point result, which is just smaller. So you want to connect, that way you can get this hane and erase these points. It's still a big, you know, it's still, the result is still worth around 10 points for white, for black, because it still prevents the opposite from happening, which is here, black tanuki, and then boom, 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 like that. So, you know, black still saves a lot of their own points, but yeah. Very common big mistake. Big endgame mistake. It's not a small mistake. Okay. Moving along now. We're getting there. So I'm just gonna, you know, speed along here. It's the joseki move, as most of you know, is this one, which is patient because like if white tries to go out, there's things you can do like push, cut, block, atari, and that kind of thing, and get your, I mean, you might think of pulling this out, and that's fair, and that's a good enough move that I wouldn't stop you guys from doing it. Although the best move is this one, but this move may very well give your opponent a lot of trouble. And you know, skill wise, this could end up, you know, in actual practice, this, like in a Q level game, this might be the better move for black. But this is the proper move. But anyway, there's stuff that black can do and still end up blocking the center off, right? If white goes here, then black can immediately push and cut because this bump is a big mistake. It's not sente. It doesn't fix anything either, so the push and cut still works. So don't bump either. But basically black can make white fix with like these kinds of moves. We'll just say this one for ease of conversation, and then now black can, you know, finish blocking the center, right? The common mistake is to attach, you know, impatiently. The problem with that is white can wedge. And now black has a lot of defects. Like even if black plays here, white can cut. Or take some advantage of it anyway later in the game. Another example is like with this attach. One of my students directly played here. But in this kind of shape where you have like a one space jump attached to a one space jump, what do you think, chat? Where should we play? there's an important shape aspect here. Yeah, depending on whose turn. Wedge, that's right. If black wedges, white now has 3 groups and 2 cutting points and very low liberty counts. And black is all united and strong. So the way it went in my teaching game is that white went here actually, and then I cut, and then it went like this. And then white was sad. Yeah. So the wedge is good, and if it's white's turn, white should also wedge. Yeah. So yeah, so in this kind of joseki, like if there's a black stone here and then we're blocking therefore that side, in general you block this side, you cut. But if there's a stone here or here, then you can block the other side for this joseki. And don't play here, you need to just extend. Okay. Or like this kind of move. So this comes from a double approach joseki. So double approach here, here, and there's some clamp agi here, by the way, like this kind of thing. But anyway, that's why white doesn't do this this Atari, because if they Atari and then they try to clamp, there is a super Tsuji here, which makes this cut die. And if white does that, black follows, and still they can't cut because of this. So this Atari, it's actually really cool. Like, it means black doesn't have to connect and allow this. They can actually play here and capture all the white stones. It's very famous and very cool. But if white didn't Atari, then the clamp is actually here, because this super Tsuji doesn't work because this is Atari now. Being Atari, black has to connect. And that means white can sort of just, you know, capture all the things now. Capture everything. So that's a cool thing there. But the main thing I want to show you guys here. Where's my branch? Is this kind of peep. So sometimes some of you play this kind of thing. But in most cases, it's going to be a bad move because after they connect, you have to still add liberties to your stone for it to really accomplish anything. Like if you do anything else, nothing's stopping white from playing here or here. So they're going to live easily anyway, almost like your stone wasn't even there. And if you play here, then white can run away. But actually, this move serves as a peep too. Because actually, in this type of shape, like 2 stones and hane and stones here, the knight's move approach to it actually is like a peep, because if white ignores, this cut actually works. If white tries to capture it, then Atari and capture. Yeah. Therefore, this is a much better way to quote unquote peep the shape, because white still has to fix the peep, although they'll probably do it indirectly like this by making another liberty to make this cut not work anymore. But essentially white has to, you know, fix it, and now you're not stuck against the white shape, right? You're all the way over here and your stone is happy and healthy. So don't do this kind of move. Okay, what else? Head of 2 stones. So, you know, 3/3 invasion and then suddenly Tanuki, like Tanuki now, or Tanuki after this, and get yourself Haned here. It's generally quite bad. So don't let that happen. I see this actually happen, even though it's such a classic proverb to, you know, Hane the head of 2 or 3 stones blindly. It still happens. People let this happen. And in the same game, which is, by the way, taken from one of your games too, you guys. So this happened. And then white's the one who punished black here, right, by playing this. But then after this, white Tanuki'd. And suddenly black can play here, which they didn't. But, you know, that shows that maybe white doesn't fully understand why why Hane the head is so good, because they allowed black to do the same thing. And now, you know, now these two stones are Haned on both of the heads of the two stones. So when white Hanes, if white plays here, what black can double Hane now because of this double Atari coming up. So it's very painful for white now, even though black also has very bad defects. So not only did both players suffer the same thing and sort of commit the same crime, it seems like neither of them really understand that the whole point is staying ahead, and also staying up on the, you know, fourth line. Okay, we're getting through. So in this large knights move, 3/3 invasion, the joseki goes like this. Some of you make the mistake of haneing the wrong side, which can get your whole corner killed because this is a killable corner. Of course, the outside might affect, especially if white has some support nearby, but white should hane here because this is the black stone that has fewer liberties compared to the two stones, right? Hane this one. That's going to give white this Atari, which then makes this hane and connect finish in sente, because if black tries to kill like this to make this into a dead shape, white can cut here. So white should just cut. And now black has to sacrifice one of these groups, actually. So white's alive. So black has to connect, and then white finishes living, and then black tanukis or plays here. And white's alive with the L+2, small L+2 corner shape. However, I see sometimes you guys think that you can't block here because you're scared of this. And so you play here. But that's a big mistake. Now white can go out. Black loses an entire side of potential now. It's a huge loss. And white's corner is super happy. You can block because even if white Ataris, you respond once. And then it's not like you play here and get captured, or play here and then something weird happens. It's after this, black just takes a stone. And then no problem. Everything's connected for black. And also the whole corner died for white. It's all dead. So white doesn't have time for this. White actually has to connect, and then you can connect. So do not back off with this move. That's a bad move. Okay. And then we have... so we covered these bad push-ins, right? This push-in is bad for the reasons that we talked about before. It makes... And often it's followed by this move, which is making it seem even worse, because this move, later you can block and it's threatening white's stone, right? But imagine if you push first and then you block. Your block has no power. Also, I'm not sure, some of you guys may not have seen before, but there's this variation where... first of all, black has this attaching move, but also... hane and crosscut here is a thing. So if white takes, black is able to then get this double hane because now it's Atari, and play like this and block off the top side really well. Or we get into some trading where black takes, white takes, black squeezes, and kind of does a switcheroo with white and takes the top, and then white takes the side here. But none of that is possible for black. The options are completely gone if black did this push, this meaningless push. So, you know, you gotta, like, don't think that a move is good just because it's sente. Sente, but for what? For a 1 point reduction? You probably lost you lost points from that exchange in terms of losing all your options and strengthening white stones. And this is a move that you always could have played, even as like a co-threat or just endgame. This is endgame, right? White's never going to take that away from you. White here, for black, something like this would be a terrible exchange for white. So don't do that. Another bad push in here. Okay, moving on. We're almost done. This is from one of your games. where should black where should black connect? So black came in with a shoulder hit here. White pushed, jump, wedge, it's all normal. Where should black connect? Tanuki can be possible sometimes. Yeah. So the answer is to connect somewhere on the top. And we're not going to talk about like, should it be here? Should it be here? Should it be here, 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 here? Let's just abstract that away and focus on which side, okay? You know, we're not going to compare this and this. Let's just pretend that yes, there's some better shape to choose, but we're just going to talk about this and this, okay? Because that's just the matter of which side. So the question is, which stone is more important, this one or this one? The thing is, this stone, first of all, has only 2 liberties left. And if you're following a constant proverb of like, you know, always help the stone with less liberties, that is not gonna serve you very well. Because the more important thing than which stone has fewer liberties is which stone is more important. It's way more, that's way more important question. You need that question first. And then among your important stones, maybe you can ask yourself which one has the least liberties, right? Because sometimes all the stones are important, like all the groups. But here, this move is stuck against those white stones, okay? It's stuck against them, so that means its influence is limited. Its influence points like a bit this way. This way. But all the influence pointing like north and west and like, you know, southwest, northwest, it's all blocked by white. That therefore the influence is 0, right? It may or may not be your game. So the influence of this stone is like less than half of, you know, like if we look at this stone or this stone, they still have a lot of space and kind of pointing to the rest of the board, you know, right? They still have a lot of effect. So this stone is like low in influence, low in liberties, and it's the other question is which stone is going to be related to more territory? Like if white captures this stone versus if white captures this stone, which way would give white more territory? You can try to imagine like white cutting. And so in the real game, black played here and white cut, and then black pushed along something like something along these lines, like this, possibly like this. And you see that white's getting a huge left side, right? But what if black had done the opposite? If black had done the opposite, let's say here, and white cuts this one, then this happens, push, push, push. How many points did white get from that? Probably around 4 points, right? 4 or 5 points. So black probably gained more than that just in terms of the influence value out here. And at least when they play another move, it'll be a lot more than 5 points. So, you know, whether black chooses to push down and Hane like this to block off this area, or, you know, block here, or Tanuki, maybe to play something something like this, or even just something like this. You know, even if this move is not the best move on the board, this move is going to be worth a lot of points. You know, it's going to be claiming a bunch of stuff here with the potential to also, it's like partially claiming this stuff, right? So even just plopping a stone there, it's going to be many fold bigger than what white gained here. In fact, white probably gained negative from this just because of what I said. Sometimes that happens, right? You take gote and yet you get negative. You give your opponent points with your sente. Anyway, so those are the things to look at. I think the most important one is like which one, if cut, would give more to my opponent. But also just looking like when a stone is that damaged, it's kind of like in this kind of if we have like this kind of shape, and then I don't recommend peeping here unless you already have a white stone around there, and then it just becomes kind of natural. I don't recommend coming in with the AI style cold turkey peep where they can resist you, and then, you know, you might end up with like you might mishandle this group and black gets territory and stuff and you just get nothing but a weak group running around. Like, don't try to mimic everything AI does. So I really don't suggest this move. But exactly, yeah, like if you get this peep off, the main point of this is that you got a stone here with some sort of influence, even though it's quite weak. You know, maybe it gives you a ladder, like a ladder head. Maybe it just disrupts some black connection of black groups, or it's just gonna do stuff, right? You don't know what it does, but it does stuff. But this stone here doesn't really do stuff. It connects and that's it. Its influence is blocked this way. Like if you imagine like windows, right? There's a window, 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 window. These are windows, okay? And how many of these windows are blocked off? This one is blocked by their own stone. Blocked, 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 right? So this stone can only see this way, and like that's pretty much it. Like a little bit this way, maybe. Like it has very little influence. That's the way that I see that. That's the way that I think about influence. And you can feel it, like from Go experience. Like this group, okay, this wall, it feels like it has big influence pointing out that way, right? But suddenly when you put even a single white stone here, right? Or maybe you add like another one, which I don't recommend, by the way. It's going to be 0 points and vulnerable and slow and weird. But in this kind of scenario, but if you just put a stone here, you can feel that black's influence is diminished greatly. You know, even though this group is super weak and stuff. And suddenly if we add one more move, not only has white replaced black and now it's white's influence, but even this is a weak group now, right? But of course it's not going to go that way. You know, you can't play this because black's just going to take the points and you're going to be floating and weird. So if you do play this peep, at least don't like run around with it. Just let it chill. That's the thing about exchanges, is sometimes they're subtle. You get an exchange that in logical terms is, you know, you're getting a stone that's better than their stone. And it's just a position thing. Your stone is better positioned than theirs. It's more efficient. So you have some unknown amount of point gain from that. And you just leave it at that. And then you don't need to even think about it sometimes. You just move on with your life. And that kind of subtlety is why I also don't recommend doing this peep in the first place, because your opponent can counterattack and make your life miserable. Unless, like I said, unless you have a nearby stone that makes it just very kind of foolproof to play this exchange, or hard for black to counterattack. Okay, the final thing I'll do, I'm gonna skip along. Here's another funny example of very common things that people do. It's kind of also similar to, let me think here. Like when you play exchanges nearby two of your own territories where, you know, you hurt your other territory to help one. It's like sibling quarrel, where you have sibling territories and you help one in a way that hurts the other. This is kind of similar, but this is funny because I called this one double crude two-sided strike because this move is super crude for this is from one of your games too, by the way, but I think it's the opponent who played these moves, not Buzzsaw, but someone's games. So white played this move that's too close to black's stone, and then when black responds, white is now damaged, so white would need to sort of add something, but then, you know, now black has access to the corner, right? This is super crude. That should be here, but it's here. And then they play here too. And the mentality is white is trying to say, hey, I get this and I get this and you get nothing. But it's silly because, and I've done this kind of thing a long time ago too, but it's silly because this is super flimsy shape and so is this. Those stones barely accomplish anything. Like black can still play this move. You know, even this cut doesn't work for white. Black can also still play here, no problem. White's just dead. So it's silly to make those kind of exchanges. You have to just be patient and take things properly. Okay, we're pretty over time, but chat, how would you handle this 3-3 invasion? What I'll do actually is the final thing I was going to show you guys would take a while because it's basically a big position where like I show you guys the moves and you guys have to point out all the bad exchanges. I'm going to leave that as homework for you guys. So we'll talk about that after. But the question here is how to handle this 3-3 invasion. So what I see too often is people just playing joseki here like this. And then white lives. You can't just play joseki. Look at the outside. Look at this outside. So black should play something like this, second line, like one of these. Whichever side is wider, that's probably where you should play. Or, I mean, this side is wider, so we play from here. But let's say that we have some issues with our group over here, like maybe we have some vulnerabilities, which we don't, but let's say we did. Then you might play from this side, even though it's narrower, to push white the other way. That way white doesn't come close to your issues. Right? So you might play from this side. But basically, you're not even going to block this either. You're just going to pull back. Because you can let white out because white's running out to their doom. Right? There's no getting out. So you just keep going. If white blocks, you just do a second line attack again. Or even this can work too. But this one... no, this one doesn't really work actually because if you start killing this, then this cut is going to start working. Like, let's say like this. But anyway, it's just simpler to play again on the second line. Don't care about the one stone. Yeah, just play here and like this. If white blocks this, then just like you could save this stone. What I would like to do here is actually play here and just make it false like this. You could pull out your stone too, but in case there's some shenanigans, your opponent can somehow, like, these peeps might not be sente, but in the game, if they were, then, you know, something bad might happen. So like sente and then sente, sente, sente. So the easiest is probably just making a false eye here. And you don't even necessarily, like if you Atari here, that's going to be dangerous because this cut can make it rely on ko. So like you could take the ko, but then white does a ko threat, takes back the ko, you play here, white plays here, and then you're in trouble. So don't even like block things either, just, you know, pull it out. So you have to play differently in these kind of scenarios. It's kind of like if we go to the thing I was gonna show you guys, but I'm gonna turn it into homework. I have this big long sequence I played out, and you can find this in this file. It's called Let's Find All the Bad Exchanges. Okay, it's the 6th variation that I posted at the top of the chat. It's called Let's Find All the Bad Exchanges, and you play it out basically. You play this variation up to yeah, here. And the goal is to see how many moves you can comment on that are bad and why they're bad. Because this, I don't know how many you guys have noticed, but there's an incredible amount of bad moves in here. And if I had to count them really quick as we go along, I'm not going to count them out loud because then you guys will know which ones. But let me think. There's like around, yeah, more than 15, I think, bad moves. So that's going to be your homework. Okay? I would like you guys to take some time to go through that variation that is called let's find all the bad exchanges. And in the study group, or yeah, preferably in the study group channel, and you guys can go on voice chat or something with each other if you think, if you want to, if you think that would be enjoyable, but just to figure it all out. And maybe you guys could even collectively, you know, try to present me with your answers. Maybe you guys can figure it out together, but you can also just, you know, one by one, you guys can just DM me or post to me in one of the channels about it. So that's kind of the homework I'm going to leave you guys with, instead of making this class take any longer. But yeah, I think that's about it. We were looking at the 3-3. I was going to show you one more. We talked about how you shouldn't play joseki here because of context, right? So I'll point out one of the bad moves from this game, okay? And it's actually one of the, it's probably one of the best out of the bad moves. Like it's one of the most innocent and least, you know, losing of the moves, or least bad, right? Which is going to be this one, and I'll explain this one. So this is the one part that I'll give you. This move is just simply too flat. So somebody's following joseki blindly here, but like it's all third line, and white's pretty strong here. So white should be playing something like here, or maybe even this one, or even at least this one, but not flat like that. Especially if the white stone were here, then absolutely the correct answer would be something like this one or this one. AI might like something like this, whereas something like this would be safe and kind of classic. But this is something that you could try if you're more optimistic and you don't mind black coming in, even separating you. But that's another example of blindly following joseki. Yeah. Okay, so that's going to be that for the class. We went through pretty fast, which left me not really as much time as I would have liked for, you know, asking questions along the way, although there was a few. So I'm going to maybe start to include less I'm realizing that my classes don't need to have quite so much content prepared, but at least there's pros and cons, right? You guys get to rewatch the video and learn more if you put the time in, since there's more content. But yeah, so I hope that most of you have found at least something in this list that you've been doing that you can correct. For the most part, this was pretty Q oriented. Like most of the Dan level and Dan-ish players probably are playing few to none of these types of mistakes. But it was mostly SDK. Yeah, SDK stuff. Okay, so that's gonna be yeah, that's gonna be class number 23. Thank you guys for being here, and I'll upload the video soon, and I'll see you guys later. Bye bye.